But my name's E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books. And Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We've been around for 45 years. We are currently closed to the public, but open online 24/7 and shipping orders every day, including orders for Secret Atlanta, as well as Jonah's first book, which I was going to grab, Jonah, and then I realized that it rides around. There you go. I take Jonah's book everywhere with me. It's actually literally in the glove box of my car because anytime I am sort of free to do something fun, I just I'm like, oh, what park haven't I visited yet? What green space haven't I visited yet? And I got a notification today on Facebook that 6 years ago to the day is the first day that I went to the Doll's Head Trail because Jonah recommended it in his book. So I suspect that many of y'all who are logging on now are here because you read Jonah's first book, Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest. If you haven't read it, it's out in a great new edition. It is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And I'm a native Atlantan, and it's a book that I learned things from without, I was like, oh, who knew that there were all these spaces? And I am really excited about this book because similarly, I was telling Jonah, I only knew about a third of the things in this book, and I've lived in Atlanta almost all of my 38 years. And so I was thrilled that there were all these things that I didn't know. So if you don't have the book yet, you're going to have lots of opportunities to purchase the book via the links in our Crowdcast down here. I'll be putting up links. You can also donate to our nonprofit anytime. We fund all of our events through our nonprofit. That is all tax deductible. We really appreciate anything you're able to do. You're also going to have the opportunity to ask questions down at the bottom. So you can also vote for questions that you are interested in. It's just like Reddit. So just upvote the things that you're into, and then we'll ask Jonah those questions throughout. And then finally, there are some polls at the bottom. So Jonah asked us some questions to give us a chance to vote for the things that we, know about Atlanta. So please, it's participatory. You can join any of those things anytime. You can also, say things in the chat, talk to one another. Of course, please be kind. And yeah, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Please welcome Jonah McDonald for Secret Atlanta.
Cool. Thanks, ER. Hey, y'all. This is my first book talk about Secret Atlanta, and I'm kind of excited and also nervous because there's huge numbers of people online watching me, and I'm not a celebrity. But so what I thought I'd do is let's break the ice a little bit, tell you how I got to writing Secret Atlanta. Tell you some stories about Atlanta that you may or may not know, a little bit about, how I went about finding stuff for the book, and then, answer some questions. So hopefully it'll be a fun time. We're kind of stuck here, we're sheltering in place, and at least the community I'm part of, even though the governor's decided he's going to start opening things up, the people I'm around are still staying. We're doing our sheltering in place still and trying to be as careful as possible. So it's a hard time to have a brand new book out, especially one that makes people want to get out and about the city. So maybe what I can do is just kind of give you a little checklist. Anybody else taking notes about what they want to do once the COVID crisis is over? So I hope everybody's safe and healthy, and let's talk a little bit about Atlanta, and then get that list written down for after we can start going out and about.
Yeah.
So as ER said, about I guess it is about 6 years ago now that Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest was published. I worked on this book for 2.5 years because I was driving children up to the mountains 2 hours in a school bus to get them out into the real nature. And then I'd have to put them back in a school bus and drive them 2 hours back to Atlanta. And I just thought there's got to be a better way than 4 hours of driving for 2 hours of nature. So I started looking around for the forests that were hidden in the Atlanta metro area. And I found over 90 different places that you could go on an honest to goodness hike in Atlanta and not really have to drive very far. So I looked around and there was no book written that had all of these places all put in one place. And I just said, I guess this is my job right now. I'm gonna write that book. And lo and behold, I had a publisher pick it up, and it's just been really popular. People still walk up to me telling me about the hike they went on. And it used to be, and this kind of leads into Secret Atlanta. It used to be that when I walked up to people and said I'm an author of a hiking guidebook, their eyes would get wide and they said, "Oh, have you heard about this place in Atlanta? It is called Stone Mountain." And of course, I would say, "Oh, yes, Stone Mountain. That's a wonderful place to hike." Or somebody would say, "Have you heard about it? This is an amazing trail. It's called Sweetwater Creek State Park." And I would nod my head. Or they would say, "Or this location, it's called Kennesaw Mountain." And those are kind of what I call the big three of Atlanta for hiking, is Stone Mountain, Sweetwater Creek, and Kennesaw Mountain. And what I really want this book to do is, the first book, Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest, is to kind of allow people to know that they don't just have to go to the big three. There's so much more around Atlanta, even trails that have opened up since my book's been published. And oftentimes I get the question, and I'm sure I will with this book as well, why are you giving away my secrets? And I think really what it is if you go out on a beautiful Saturday like yesterday, not during the COVID crisis, but at other times, to, let's say, Sweetwater Creek State Park, you might see 1,000 people that day walking those trails. But if you go to Cascade Springs Nature Preserve, maybe 15-minute drive away, you might see 5 people walking those trails. And if we can just redistribute that a little bit, think how much better it is for nature and for Atlanta. So again, that idea of we get these ideas in our head of what Atlanta is. And as you can see in the poll that we put down here, I wrote, what do you think is the famous thing that most defines Atlanta? And I just love that this group of people has decided that Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement is the thing that most defines Atlanta. It's probably the thing I would vote for as well. But we get these ideas of Atlanta is a city of traffic, or is the city of the Civil Rights Movement. It's the city of the Braves or of Coca-Cola, or where the '96 Olympics were held. But when I got the opportunity to write a book called Secret Atlanta, I started thinking about, well, what else is Atlanta other than just those famous things? And with those famous things, what are the stories that we may all not know at the famous thing? So that was kind of how I framed this. And I guess I should also say how I actually got to write a book called Secret Atlanta. This was definitely the strangest bit about it. I got a phone call from a publishing house saying, "Would you write a book?" And I don't think this happens, but I think that they found, I guess they were maybe Google searching hidden and secret, and they found my name. And so they were, "Well, we're trying to write a book called Secret Atlanta. Let's find the guy who does hidden for us." And I at first actually put them off after 2 phone calls and emails, because I was like, this is too sketchy. No publisher reaches out to an author. But I started vetting them and researching. Reedy Press out of St. Louis, Missouri, is actually really well respected and does travel and special interest books about cities all across the country. And they had just started a series called Secret Minneapolis or Secret Los Angeles. And when they said, "We would like you to write Secret Atlanta," well, I thought, what a perfect thing for me. I love secrets. I love finding off the beaten path things. I love scavenger hunts. And so that's what I decided to make this book into, was just that. So what I hope Secret Atlanta will do, first and foremost, is that you'll have a good time with it. There are 90 different topics in this book. You'll have to tell me after this if you beat ER's record of 30% of them or not, that you know of. So yeah, definitely email me and tell me how many of the things in this book you already knew before you read it. So I want you to have fun with it. I want you to learn some new stories, but also read about the places that you aren't aware of. Or if you notice in that other poll that we have up here, what area of town have you spent the least amount of time in? I'm somebody who I live in the Kirkwood neighborhood on the east side of Atlanta, right close to Decatur. So it would have been very easy for me to find every secret thing in my neighborhood and then just put it all into a book. But instead, what I tried to do was go and ask every person that I met. It was a great conversation starter. They'd say, "What's going on with your life?" It's like, "Well, I'm writing this book. It's called Secret Atlanta. What's the secret you know that I don't know?" And then starting to piece together all those other areas of town that I don't know as intimately as my neighborhood, and then put together a list of secrets that's not just Jonah's neck of the woods, but hopefully all of our neck of the woods. Well, what area of town do you live in? That's the first place to start. And then say, well, let's find what the things Jonah knows about my neighborhood that I may not have known, or maybe I know it all already. But then go, it looks like a fair number of y'all haven't spent much time in Clayton County. And one of my favorite things in the metro area is the Clayton County water purification system. And yes, you can go visit a wetland area. Of course, not now during sheltering in place, but you can go visit a wetland area in Clayton County, which is one of the most impressive green spaces in the metro area, that also has an amazing story about ecology and about really forward thinking. Clayton County in the late 1970s first started designing what now is known nationally as one of the premier water purification systems in Clayton County. So maybe that can change your mind about Clayton County, or maybe make you want to go to a new place. And so I really want this book to be something that not only gives you fun stories to tell around the dinner table, but also maybe redefines how you think about our city. So let's go into some stories about the book. Does that work for you, ER? All right. Let's see. How do I want to start? Let's go with let's go with a place close to my house. ER, would you pull up the one that says Elvis Vault? And let's see if we can show a picture.
Absolutely. So we're gonna do a thing that is new to me, but we're gonna try and make it work right now.
Otherwise, I'll look at the pictures here and see if I can pull it up.
Yeah. No, I think we can do it.
Okay.
Chrome tab. Sorry guys, this is a whole new world, but we're excited about it. Okay. This is what I am trying to show. Can you see what I'm showing here?
I can see a little box of it.
Okay, we're gonna make it big now.
Look at that. Beautiful. Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah. Technology.
So
amazing.
I wish if I was in a room with you all right now, I'd say, raise your hand if you've been here before. I had not. This is inside an old bank, inside the vault of the bank, in Little Five Points, in the Star Community Bar. And this is only one little part of it, though. You've got to go in there because it used to be a bank. When they took it over and turned it into a bar and a music venue, they didn't know what to do with this vault. And the owners were into kind of rockabilly music and really loved Elvis. So they just started collecting all of the Elvis kitsch that they could imagine, and just putting it into this vault in the corner of the bar. And so now you just walk in there and you see their stage and you see their bar over to the right, and you just turn the corner and there's an honest to God bank vault. There's the big locking mechanism and everything. It's always open now. And you turn the corner and there's also a prayer bench. So you can actually kneel and pray like if you're at like a Catholic church in front of the shrine to Elvis Presley here. And of course, they decided the thing that you'd be looking straight at is a picture of Elvis's mom right above a golden toilet. So I think that they'd be okay with you walking into the bar and just asking to see the Elvis vault. But the nice thing about the Star Community Bar is that they serve very, very inexpensive margaritas. So if you need one of those after the COVID crisis is over with, I do recommend you trying this out because it's a sight. So not everything in the book, though, is something that makes you scratch your head. One of the things that I loved learning about, I learned about from somebody named Hannah Palmer. And if you'd pull up the picture that says Flint, Hannah is part of a group called Finding the Flint. I know the Flint River because I've spent some time in Albany, Georgia. And in Albany, the Flint River goes right through town. But very few people know that the Flint River almost literally starts underneath the Hartsfield-Jackson Airport runway. This is a picture of the mighty Flint. Yeah, well, it's a drainage ditch at this point, but right there between Hapeville, College Park, and East Point, you have the headwaters of both the South River, which is one of the major watersheds of Atlanta, and the Flint River, which you see right here. This is the Delta Flight Museum that you see in this picture. That's the parking lot where the Delta employees park. And then you have this drainage ditch, which is actually the headwaters of the Flint River. And Hannah and her group, Finding the Flint, are trying to open up the Flint and take this area right here and turn it into a public park, and take other areas of the Flint and turn them into a public park. What you'll read about in the book is that the airport hasn't always taken good care of these waters. There was a pretty major spill of some kind of de-icing chemical that went right into the river some years ago. They've cleaned up their act since then. But one of the things that got me tipped off onto this is that I don't know what the last time you've gone through Hartsfield-Jackson is, but at some of the water fountains, there's a sign hanging above the water fountain that says, "Protect the Flint River. Send a text message if you're in support of the Flint River." And so the airport is starting to embrace the river that it sits on top of. And again, is this a wonderful tourist attraction at this point? Not quite yet, but there are people working to make it so. Yeah. All right, so let's move. Oh, well, we're at the airport. Would you pull up Corn Cord? So Hartsfield-Jackson Airport is interesting as well because it has not just this sculpture, but it actually has the largest collection of public artwork, I believe, in the whole state of Georgia. There was a rule, I don't know all the details of it, but there was a rule created that said that there had to be a portion of any money put aside for capital improvements that had to go to art. And so as a result, Hartsfield-Jackson has a world-class art curator and program. And so most of the art is in E and F, the terminals E and F, which not as many people go to because Delta is what, B, and then I think Southwest is C. But I decided to feature this particular piece because, well, look at it. It is called the Corn Cord, spelled Corncore, like the Concorde, except made of corn. And this artist decided that he wanted to make an homage to edible food. Right near it is also a control tower that looks like peas. And it is definitely one, when you walk by, your head turns and you say, "Oh, what is that?" But all throughout the Hartsfield-Jackson, you can go on an art tour if you're stuck between flights. Just head on down to those terminals, and in every single departure gate, there's a different artist creating a different art installation, and it's honestly really awesome. And they very rarely do tours for the public. School kids get to come and see it, but rarely do they do tours. So if you have the opportunity to go to Hartsfield-Jackson to go on a flight, arrive a little early and do an art tour before you do. All right, so let's go away from Hartsfield-Jackson and see if I can show you a couple other things. One of the questions that I see was asked here was which secret was the hardest to find, to write, or simply took the longest to get the summary the way you wanted. And honestly, the hardest thing for me was the history. I was a history major in college. I've written quite a bit of history academically, and then I also was a history teacher when I was younger. And one of the things I really wanted to make sure this book lifted up is some of the history stories of Atlanta that that people may have forgotten, or in some cases had been swept under the carpet. So because though I've written academically, and what you'll see in this book is it is not written academically. This is written to be snappy stories that I think will inspire you to learn more, and will hopefully make you think a little bit more deeply, smile, chuckle, and go visit places. But the history ones are hard. And part of that is because Atlanta has done so much bulldozing of our history, either symbolically or actually physically bulldozing our history. There's a lot of our history that you just can't visit. So one picture, maybe ER, you can bring up the one that's called Atlanta Berlin Wall Historic. This one's not quite as high quality of a picture. Hopefully it shows up on the screen. This is one of the darker times in Atlanta's history. And this is a road closed barrier. What happened is in the early 1960s, all of a sudden, neighborhoods that had been up to that point not open to African-American families, all of a sudden, Black families were having the opportunity to move into neighborhoods they hadn't been allowed to live in before. And the first person who moved into the Peyton Forest neighborhood, who was African-American, it had been an all-white neighborhood, was a medical doctor. And today, when people think about, oh, a doctor's moving into my neighborhood, that's a good sign for my neighborhood. It was precisely the opposite in the early 1960s. The residents of Peyton Forest neighborhood petitioned the mayor and said, you've got to put a stop to this. We can't have more of those people moving into our neighborhood. And the mayor listened. It was Mayor Ivan Allen Jr. He listened and acted. And he put up this barrier. Barricade is what they were calling it at the time. But activists immediately keyed in on this and said, this is a wall. In fact, it's not just a wall, it is the Atlanta Berlin Wall. And it became international news that the mayor of Atlanta had put up a wall separating Black and white communities in his city. The wall was taken down by activists, and then it was put back up by the city. The KKK showed up to protect the wall. Civil rights activists picketed in front of the wall, and eventually there was so much national and international pressure. Pretty much bad press is what did it. And Ivan Allen Jr. later said something to the effect of, boy, that was my biggest mistake as mayor. I should never have created something that people can see to show the segregation of our city. And that shows you a lot about Mayor Ivan Allen Jr. as well, is that he wasn't quite as concerned about having done the wrong thing, but the fact that people could see it. And he said, you don't want to do something bad that people can take a picture of. And this picture, in the context of separating communities, is pretty arresting. So, ER, if you'd pull up the other picture called Atlanta Berlin Wall Harlan, this is the location today where that barricade stood. Just a quiet neighborhood street right there at Harlan and T Road. And guess how many historical markers there are? There's none. Very quickly, this was a story that the Atlanta business community did not want people talking about. And it was kind of actively and passively swept under the carpet. And one of the ways I was able to find this location of where there were two walls, there was one on Peyton Road and one on Harlan Road. And one of the ways I found where this is that there's a wonderful book called Sacred Places a tour of Atlanta civil rights sites by Harry Lefevre that gives all of these more off the beaten path civil rights sites that you can go and visit. And y'all, I do hope you drive by here, partially because you may not have visited the Peyton Forest neighborhood before. I mean, it's just a residential neighborhood, but honestly, the streets are beautiful, the houses are nice, there's cute parks around. It's a nice place to go visit. But all you'll see is what you see in front of you. So is it a tourist destination? Should it be a tourist destination? I do recommend the book Sacred Places. The other thing I recently just learned about is that there's an organization called Civil Bikes, which is a bicycle tour company run by somebody named Nedra Deadweiler. And she has often run a lesser known civil rights sites of Atlanta tour, in which he takes you by places also that don't have historical markers, like this one. So I got to this because I was answering the question of what's the hardest to find, or what was the summary that took me the longest to write. It was, I wanted to write, what I just talked for 5 minutes about that. I had 300 words to tell you about each one of these things. And I wanted to give you all the backstory and everything. And I had all these, I even found Georgia Tech has all of Ivan Allen's papers. And so you can read the letters that the community was sending him, and you can read his responses to them. There's all these first-person documents. So the historian in me wanted to write a whole treatise about this one story. But instead, I had to figure out, well, how do you frame this story in a way that gives people the information they need, says something about it, but then also, like, hopefully inspires you all to go read more about this particular period of Atlanta history. All right, I have 31 pictures, and I'm not going to get through all of these. So I'm going to look at my list and find out one that hopefully will be another fun thing to look at. All right, well, this is the one my daughter was most excited about. So I'm sure some of you in here know my daughter, Annie Mae. So we'll go to the one that my daughter was just, her eyes bugged out, and she was like, "Daddy, we've got to go there." So if you'd click on Plaza Fiesta, ER. Now that you know where this is, where this picture was taken, I hope many of you have been to Plaza Fiesta. It's one of the premier sites on Buford Highway. And now that you see the picture here, you can see probably why my 5.5-year-old daughter was very, very excited about quinceañera dresses. My daughter has decided she wants to wear dresses and high heels all the time. And she also likes climbing trees and riding bicycles and going hiking. Don't worry, she's still my daughter. So she saw these dresses and said, "Daddy, I like that first one, and I like the third one." But Plaza Fiesta is a shopping mall, but instead of having a bunch of national chains, it's a whole bunch of really interesting mom and pop stores. I mean, you can go in and get something as mundane as a new cell phone, or you can go get a quinceañera dress. There is some of the best food in Atlanta in the food court there. And when you walk in, they've designed it. I will butcher it if I try to say it in Spanish, but their motto is our little corner of the neighborhood. And they've designed the place so it really feels like a neighborhood meeting place. There's even a little plaza fountain in the middle, an indoor playground for kids, an arcade. It's just a really cool place to go. I'm not a Spanish speaker myself, though I do know some words, but most of the people that you'll see at Plaza Fiesta are speaking Spanish. But it is truly a place that I think everybody in Atlanta should visit, because it's so much fun to walk around and see people acting like a real community, and the food, of course, too. Plaza Fiesta has even branded itself to schools to say, if you want to take your Spanish class on a field trip to what it would be like to go to Latin America, come to Plaza Fiesta. Some of the biggest holidays are celebrated there too. They have big celebrations for holidays such as Cinco de Mayo or Mexican Independence Day, things like that. So a cool place to visit. And while you're on Buford Highway, I don't have a picture of this one, so I guess we can just go back to my face. But right around the corner from Buford Highway in Brookhaven is one of my favorite ones that I like talking about, because when I first started writing this book and I told my wife about this one, she said, "There is what in Atlanta?" And yes, there is something called the Crypt of Civilization in Atlanta. And it is the first ever modern time capsule. When I was in elementary school, I got really into the idea of time capsules. You know, like taking a container and then putting some things from your time in it and then burying it and saying, I'm not going to dig this up for 50 years. Well, one of the first people that really got Oglethorpe University onto the map, the president of the college. Oh, do I have a picture of it, DR? Ah, look at this. Yeah, pull it up there. He got really enamored by the ancient Egyptians. And this was right about the time, this is in the 1930s, there was just a lot of talk about opening the tombs. And he thought, you know what? We should create a modern day tomb, a crypt of civilization. And he took everything that he thought was part of American civilization from 1936, I believe, and he stuffed it. I mean, literally stuffed it into a 10 by 10 square room in the basement of Phoebe Hearst Memorial Hall, and then sealed it with a stainless steel door. You can see me in this picture standing in front of it, contemplating. And he decided because, it's a place to contemplate. Because one, if you look at the list of things that are included, it is incredibly mundane and very dated. Interesting to look at the list. And in the book, I included a few of the things that are in there. But he decided that he was going to seal the Crypt of Civilization for the same period of time that it had been since the Egyptian calendar was created to the present, which was over 6,000 years. So this is not to be opened until, I believe, after the year 8000 CE. Will Phoebe Hearst Memorial Hall be around at that point? We do not know. That's a long time from now. But they do claim that the room itself sits on top of Appalachian bedrock. And if you walk up onto the front steps of Phoebe Hearst Memorial Hall, look around on the stones. There's the stone steps leading up into this building. There is a tiny little X etched in one of those rocks, and that X is directly above the Crypt of Civilization. How would you like to go to college at a place that had the Crypt of Civilization on campus? Well, let's see. I'm going to go to one more story. Let's go to one of the more strange things that I found. Would you click on Barbie Beach #1, ER? This is one of the things I did not know about before I wrote this book. Barbie Beach. Yes, they even have their own sign. You see, it's right there on the side of the highway. And there was a couple, and the way they describe it is that they were just sitting around, just kind of talking. They were watching the Olympics, and the Winter Olympics were in Turin, Italy. And they were like, well, we live in Turin, Georgia. We should do something to celebrate the Olympics. Now, if it was me, I might watch some more Olympics or go out and play a sport. But instead, they went thrift shopping and came home with a whole bunch of Barbie dolls that no longer had their clothes. And they decide, let's make a diorama of beach volleyball with a bunch of naked Barbie dolls and dump a bunch of sand in our front yard and then set up this diorama to celebrate the Olympics, the Winter Olympics, with naked Barbie dolls playing beach volleyball. And, if you think that far outside the box, people are going to come. If you build it, they will come. And people started coming. And in fact, they have had to build a little makeshift parking lot adjacent to Barbie Beach because so many people are wanting to pull over. This is a little road between Sonoya, Georgia and Turin, Georgia, just south of Atlanta. And if you go to the next picture, ER, Barbie Beach 2, they've just gotten more and more creative. They have, this picture in particular is of a Barbie riding a dinosaur. Is that the dinosaur from Toy Story? I think it is. And they have had so many toys get donated that they now have created all of these different scenes. They did an homage to the Pride Festival at one point. They do Halloween oriented dioramas, and the one of my favorite stories about it is that the crew from The Walking Dead, which is much of it was filmed over in Sonoya, Georgia, would drive by this, and they were so confused and intrigued by it that they decided to donate some zombie Barbie dolls. I haven't watched the show Walking Dead. I'm sure many of you have, but it's a zombie show. So they donated some zombie dolls. And if I'm not mistaken, some of those zombie dolls are now dressed in UGA cheerleading outfits adjacent to Barbie Beach. And this thing has expanded from just one beach to now it has like 2 or 3 different areas all in their front yard. So, how often do we go to Turin, Georgia? Not that often, but you might find yourself down there. And it's definitely worth a stop at Barbie Beach. Hey, ER, I could go on with these stories and pictures for a long time, and I have no idea if people are actually interested because I can't see your faces. So can we do a couple questions maybe?
Yeah. So we're about 36 minutes in, which is great. So you answered the most upvoted question. The next one that I think is really a good question is, what was the biggest surprise to you?
Yeah. Well, there's 2 of them, and they were the last 2 chapters I included in the book. And they shouldn't have been a surprise to me because these are both in my neck of the woods. But I just didn't, I had not heard of either of these places until I had my number one thing I wanted to put in this book, I had to cut. Any of you who have traveled along DeKalb Avenue right near the Candler Park MARTA station have probably breathed in over the years and smelled brownies. Have you? You seem like you might if you're not in your head, ER. I go rock climbing at a rock gym right near there, and I always felt like I was gaining weight while I was rock climbing because I was smelling all this butter and chocolate or whatever it was, and I never knew what it was. So I finally reached out to the Schwann's factory that was there, and I asked them, what are you guys doing that smells so good? And it took me ages to finally find the right person to tell me, and it turns out that they only make cream pies. And I did not know this, but cream pies are not baked. So they're not actually baking pies. Instead, what they were doing is baking cookies that then they have a special cookie smashing machine. So they bake freshly baked cookies, smash those cookies, and then turn those smashed cookies into the crust of their cream pies. And so what we were smelling was the cookie crust. Why did I have to cut that story? It's such a good one. Because they just moved their manufacture of their cookies to another location. And so they're still making the cream pies there, but now they ship the cookies in from elsewhere. So for about the last year and a half, the Schwann's factory has not been baking and smashing cookies in that location. And you do not smell that wonderful buttery goodness there on DeKalb Avenue anymore. So I knew, even though it's a good story, it can't go in this book anymore because it's not really part of Atlanta. And so I started searching around, and I found 2 places that I both fell in love with and just made me think, wow, how have I lived in Atlanta for almost 20 years and not known about these places? So the first is a place that is called the Mechanical Riverfront Kingdom. Yes, it's on North Druid Hills Road. If you know where the corner of North Druid Hills and Claremont is. And then you go kind of east on North Druid Hills Road towards where there used to be a golf hitting, I don't know what that's called, driving range and batting cages. Yeah, towards the North DeKalb Mall. If you look on your left, you will see huge, gigantic iron sculptures in the front yard of this one house. And it is a man named Clark Ashton, who is incredibly smart and talented. And I think it's appropriate to say a little different, who has decided to build these enormous sculptures with very, very intriguing philosophy behind them too, all in his front yard. And he named it the Riverfront, the Mechanical Riverfront Kingdom, because when all these people who are commuting into Emory come down North Druid Hills in the morning, there is a huge amount of traffic in front of his house. And he's trying to get people to look outside their mechanical river or North Druid Hills Road and to bigger things. And so that's what his sculpture is for. But you may not know that though it's a private home, he is more than happy if you just drive right up into his driveway and park there and go look at his sculpture. I don't have a picture. Well, actually, I might have a picture.
I feel like there is. What is it called? That's what I couldn't figure out.
Druid Hill. And there's a whole other story behind this as well, which is that Clark really wants his property to be something that is a landmark. And what he's decided is that that this location, there's Clark right there. He's decided that his land as a landmark should be called Druid Hill, not Druid Hills, Druid Hill. And he's petitioned the county to kind of get on board with it. And then he's gone to the National Geographic Names Board, and he's trying to get this officially on all U.S. maps known as Druid Hill. And it's been a really hard thing for him because the politicians, particularly the local county commissioner, has not been 100% in support of naming it Druid Hill. And so he has, if you want to see some amazing stuff, Clark has a monthly newsletter that he puts out in which he is talking all about what he calls the Battle of Druid Hill, in which he is trying to get his property named officially Druid Hill. Y'all, this is a place to go. Just drive up that steep driveway through that grotto that you see there. Just park, and you never know, Clark may come out and introduce himself to you. I've heard he also runs an Airbnb and does house concerts periodically. So, of course, we're not doing that during the COVID crisis. But if you want an experience, man, this is a place to go right here.
That's so enlightening because I have driven by that house for decades of my life and always been like, oh, I wonder what artist lives there. I'm thrilled to know that. So that is very surprising. I love it.
Well, the other one is not quite as long of a story, but I was tipped off. I was wanting to do a chapter. It was called The Secret Museums of Atlanta. And I found a list. I just was going through museum. And there are so many cool museums in Atlanta. And so I wanted to have just like a checklist chapter, like just go to these 25. I'll have to post it on my website, actually. But my publisher decided they really wanted the book to be story-based. So they wanted the museums not to just be a list, but to actually have a real story behind it. And so the one that struck me was I learned that there was something called the Miniature Chair Gallery. And there's a chance that Barbara, who is the owner of the Miniature Chair Gallery, is actually she might have even been the one who asked that question. But I reached out to her and she immediately said, oh, come on, I'll give you a tour. And so I went to there we go. This is just one picture of some of the chairs here. Barbara has been collecting miniature chairs. Now, she's very clear to say these are not dollhouse chairs.
Oh,
these are miniature chairs. And this house, which is a historic home, really cool history of just the house itself. She has 3 rooms set up as her museum. It's a 3-room museum, and it has over 3,000 miniature chairs and holds the Guinness Book of World Records for the most miniature chairs in any collection. Guinness has done a good job of figuring out how to put the most esoteric world records in their book. But y'all, this one is actually a really cool one because the things that Barbara has found, some of the eBay sellers know her as the chair lady because she goes on eBay finding all these interesting chairs. One of the ones she was telling me that she was most excited about recently was miniature chairs in bottles. So you know how there's ships in bottles? Well, people make chairs in bottles too. And I guess it's the same process where you have to use these long tools to get them into bottles and you assemble the chair inside the bottle. So you can actually buy, and Barbara has a whole display case with multiple chairs in bottles inside the Miniature Chair Museum. And this is on the downtown strip in Stone Mountain Village. And you know you're going to go there because after the COVID crisis, you know you want to walk to the top of Stone Mountain, you know, following the route in hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest. Yeah. And after or before, just stop by the Miniature Chair Museum and go take a tour with Barbara. It's a really neat thing. And honestly, you just can't go away not smiling. It's unusual. And you walk through room after room after room after room of all these different kinds of chairs. And everywhere you look, there's something more to kind of like open your eyes wider at, look closer at, and sometimes scratch your head at too. Yeah.
That sounds awesome. There's so much cool stuff to explore in on the old strip in downtown Stone Mountain that I think people forget about. But now we know. I never knew that was there. So
Yeah.
we our next upvoted question was: it used to be that the monastery in Conyers allowed men and boys to tour the building and grounds extensively, but required women and girls to stay in one room and watch a slideshow. Do you happen to know whether that is still the case?
Y'all, I'm really sorry. I do not know. That is news to me. I have visited the monastery multiple times, but I'm somebody who identifies as a man, so maybe it never came up. But no, I'm not aware of that. The thing that I do when I go there is, there's so many opportunities. If you've not been there, the things you shouldn't miss, you gotta see their bonsai trees. The monks have been pruning bonsais, and there are some incredibly amazing ones. They cost quite a bit of money if you want to buy them, but just viewing them, it's like a museum of bonsai, and it's incredible. They also have these beautiful grounds you can walk around. Just last time I was there, I had a little picnic down next to their pond, really pretty, and the monastery abbey itself is actually made all of concrete, and it was hand built by the monks over a decade-long period. And it's just a peaceful and beautiful setting, especially oftentimes I find myself there in the summertime. So you step out of that intense Georgia heat and you step into this dimly lit abbey, whether you identify as a Christian or not. It's one of those places that it's just undeniably a special place. They'll let you sit in the back while they're doing their services. And sometimes I'll just walk in for just a few minutes and just take some breaths and get myself centered, and then go on my way. But you can also go on bike rides. There's a big bicycle path, and then they're now doing green burial. So there's this forest, which is a cemetery, and what they do is they bury people in this forest with planted trees, and it's quite a beautiful thing, but it's also a beautiful place to just stroll.
Jonah, we actually got a crowdsourced answer to the question, which is great.
Oh, that's amazing. Cool.
Elaine Meyerly chimed in and said she just had a retreat there that was all women, and they had free run of the building and grounds. So good to know. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Love it. Thank you. Appreciate
Elaine.
it.
Yeah.
That was Elaine?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Hi, Elaine.
So the next upvoted question was, will you eventually curate any more hikes or tours when the pandemic settles? If so, where would you like to take us?
So right before the pandemic hit, my family did the ride of the full Beltline. You can't, right? There's only certain sections you can actually ride, but we found city streets that you could kind of connect them. And the whole time I kept on pointing out to the group I was riding with, there's another thing that's in Secret Atlanta, or here's another thing in Secret Atlanta. And it got me kind of excited about figuring out some way to do a tour of some sort. As many of you know, if you know me or have been connected to me in any way, I now work for DeKalb County. I'm the park ranger at Mason Mill Park, which is the county park near the VA hospital and Emory University. And so I don't do nearly as many tours as I used to do because I'm not self-employed. And now most of the touring I do is at the park that I work at. So it's not going to be a regular thing for me. But do keep your ear to the ground, because I'm Yeah, because that's an important thing that I'm got in my mind, and I'm sure at some point I'll pull off doing something like that.
So our next question is how did you find out about some of these obscure places? But I think maybe to make it more specific, like, did you start from, oh, somebody, you said people would sort of give you some tips. How did you, go about going from, word of mouth or a rumor of a place to really making it all the way to putting it in the book?
Yeah, it's a good question. I well, there part of what I was doing was I had every single idea that I had in the one big giant list, and then I would code them each with. I guess this is just you want the book to demonstrate a diversity of topics. Like if it was just me, it would probably be like all nature stuff, right? And this is supposed to be more than that. So I had them all coded with, is it a naturey thing, or more historic topic, or more of like a landmark that there's a secret story about, those kind of things. And so first I kind of like had all those coded, and then I also created a Google map that showed where they were to make sure I wasn't just having them all in the Buckhead area or all over on the west side or the east side or something like that. So part of what I was doing was trying to find not only the good stories, but trying to find stories from different areas of town. And one of them that I included, honestly, I didn't know anything about. I grew up and the music that I loved most was hip hop. And when I was first, I guess this dates me to some extent, but when I was in, I guess middle school and early high school, Outkast had just come on the scene, and they had just blown up with their first album, and I know their music. I mean, I can recite half their lyrics, but I didn't really know their story. And so when somebody told me that, if I was looking for areas in the Tri-Cities area, kind of the Hapeville, East Point, College Park area, I should look into, some of the Outkast related tourism. I don't actually know how much tourism there is, but a lot of hip hop heads go to a shopping center, which is, at least as the story goes, and it's been corroborated by Andre and Antoine, the big boy and Andre 3000 of Outkast, where they kind of got their start. And it's one of those, it's one of those kind of good stories, right? Where these guys had known each other in high school. They had done a little performing together, a little rapping together. Yeah, I think Headland and DeLoe is on the list here. And it wasn't until they met these guys who were trying to get a recording studio off the ground. They met up in this parking lot, which still honestly looks very much like it did back in the early '90s when Outkast was getting its start. It's got the same Wayfield, and they just met up in this parking lot and started rhyming with these guys who really hadn't done a huge amount with their recording studio yet, and immediately they got signed on. And that was the start of, at least as the story goes, that was the start of the Dungeon family, which also spawned the Goody Mob, and so this location is kind of similar to I guess the one I was telling you about, Harland and T Road, where there's not like any historical markers or things, but people in the know to go to this spot and say, yeah, that's where it all began. And in the book, you'll see that Andre 3000 even kind of hat tipped to Headland and DeLoe in one of his songs on their second album. So he actually mentions Headland and DeLoe in, I believe it's the song Elevators, You and Me. But again, it's a fun story. Like, I didn't know that, even though I loved Outkast. And those of us in Atlanta know that Outkast is one of the most famous groups, one of the most famous musicians out of Atlanta. But they got their start in, the shopping center parking lot. And that's kind of a cool one, I think.
Yeah. So someone asked about the wheelchair accessibility of the locale. So, obviously something like this is very wheelchair accessible. Are there any that you think would be especially conducive to someone who uses a wheelchair visiting?
Yeah, it's a really good question. In hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest, that was one of the things that was really primary on my mind, because there are a lot of hiking trails that are paved. Not a ton, but if you think about like the Doll's Head Trail that you went to, ER, the first half mile of that trail is paved or boardwalk. The park I work at, Mason Mill Park, is an honest to goodness trail, but it's 2.5 miles of accessible, wheelchair accessible trails. So I was trying to be really careful in hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest to make sure that I was pointing those out. And so I guess getting this question, which I love because that's been close to my heart in Hidden Forest, that wasn't part of what I wrote in each chapter of Secret Atlanta. However, there's a ton of information about each location, including how to actually get in touch with and find each of the locations. So it's not listed in every chapter which one's wheelchair accessible, and I kind of take that to heart because I wish, now that I hear that question, like, man, I wish that I had done that like I had in Hidden Forest. But because many of these locations are places that are open to the general public, they're the kind of place that you can eat. I'm more than happy if you want to email me before you go out. And my website is secretatlanta.com, and my email address is right there. You can just send me an email, and I can definitely, I've been to these places, and I can tell you my experience of it. Now, I'm not somebody who uses a chair, but I can. So you're going to notice things that I may not notice, but I can at least give you my perspective on that. Also, before you visit, calling up these places. Some of the fun ones to visit though are on public streets, and as we know, public streets aren't always accessible. But there's a couple on the Beltline that are pretty neat, and one that I want to tell you the story of before I depart from this question is on the East Side Beltline. That's the place where really should not be going right now because no one is 6 foot distancing there, right? But after this passes, hopefully we can get back out there. And there is a tree right behind the Whole Foods that has been there since that parking lot of the Whole Foods and the Home Depot and the PetSmart and all that was Ponce de Leon Park. It was a baseball field. And there are 2 stories about home runs hit there. One by Babe Ruth. People say it was Babe Ruth's longest ever home run. Evidently, there was a magnolia tree standing in the outfield. The outfield was so deep that they didn't really have a fence in the outfield. It was like 500 plus feet deep. So they just had the magnolia tree out there. And you knew that if you hit the ball all the way out to the magnolia tree, it would likely be a home run. Well, also the Beltline, of course, was a train track, right? So the story goes that Babe Ruth hit a home run. It landed on one of the trains, and then the train went all the way to Joplin, Missouri. And so that was before the ball ever hit the ground. So that was Babe Ruth's longest ever home run. It's a great story. Everything I've read said that story likely did not happen. But the Braves great, Eddie Matthews, is one person that there is record of. He actually did hit a home run into that magnolia tree. So you can't actually, see the park anymore. It's now a strip mall. But the magnolia tree, there's 2 of them right there, and they're both very old. The magnolia tree that was literally in the outfield of the stadium is still there. And when you walk or stroll by or roll by on the Beltline there, you can take a look at that magnolia and try to remember what that might have been like being at Ponce Park back then. Yeah.
So it looks like we've just got 3 more quick questions. So I want to try and get to those before we sign off. So the next one is, do you have any plans to write a children's book?
Sounds good. And we're still on Headland and Delow if you want to flip over to me so I can communicate with folks more. Oh man, y'all, really? A new book? Do not let my wife hear about this. In fact, I think this is a good friend of mine who's asking this question. I know you're setting me up. So I have this idea of writing a follow-up to Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest. It's called Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Playgrounds, which is a list of places you can take your kid on a nature hike that there's also an adjacent playground. So you can do kind of like a nature and playground outing. But no, I don't have a children's book idea other than that one.
I think that's a great children's book idea.
It would be fun.
I think even just mapping the playground terrain of Atlanta would be huge. People want to know.
Hey, while I'm on playgrounds, do y'all know that there's a playground at the Peachtree DeKalb Airport? So those of you who have kids or who just like airplanes, there is an airplane themed playground right next to the runway. So you pull up, you park, and there's a playground. The kids can swing and slide and all that stuff. And there's also an observation platform. And you can just see all of these small propeller planes like take off and land over and over and over again. And so even if you're just somebody who enjoys, airplanes, it's a great place for that. So that will, of course, there's not a hike adjacent to it, but definitely a playground that appeared in Secret Atlanta.
So Trudy wants to know what happens to Barbie Beach when it rains.
That's a good question. Well, luckily they have little miniature raincoats for all the Barbie dolls. No, that's not true. I don't know. That is such a good question. So you know what we have to do? Drive down to Turin, Georgia next time it's raining and see how much of that sand washes away. I do know that they have to replenish the sand pretty regularly. I went not too long after a rain, and you could tell, but it's a passion project of this couple, so they know it's a thing and they're keeping it up.
Good to know. I guess since they're not wearing clothes, there's only so much damage that can be done. So
in the wintertime it might be different, but in the summertime, whatever.
So then our final question from the crowd is, what's the best place in Hartsfield Jackson for art sculptures?
It's a great question. Well, it depends on what your passion is, right? One of my favorites, and I don't remember the name of it, but there is an escalator between the international terminal. You can, if you enter through the international terminal and then head down into the bowels of Hartsfield Jackson to get on the plane train and everything, there's this one escalator. Those of us who've been in Atlanta a long time, you know how when you came out into baggage claim, there was that picture of that young woman with her arms spread wide, playing in the Centennial Olympic fountains? That doesn't exist anymore. But, that was one of those iconic things about Atlanta for me. And, we all had that was in our hearts, I think, that picture. There is on the flip side of the airport, if you go in from International and you go down those first escalators down into the plane train area, there is just an amazing, I think it's a collage sculpture hanging on the wall. And again, I don't remember the name of it, but it's a pretty astounding one. I love that one if you haven't been to it. Many people have been to the Zimbabwean sculpture that's, I think, between, I'm forgetting, I think it might be between A and B terminals. If you don't take the plane train, you walk it instead. But, honestly, just head over to E and F, E in particular, and just go from departure gate to departure gate to departure gate. And they've curated, this is curated art. And the airport spent money on this stuff. So it is really good artists and all very different styles. One of the ones I really loved was in the corner of one of the departure gates. There is just a wall that makes it look like you're about to enter an old country juke joint. And when I was there was just an airport employee who was just sitting there sipping a soda, like on a bench right in front of the juke joint. And it took me away from the airport. And that's what the art curators say, is they're wanting to give people moments in the midst of their travel where they can be transported into a place of wonder, and not just be, the stress of travel.
That's great. Yeah. So I wanted to take a look at the polls and see where we are, because I think it's super interesting. So it looks like, what do you think is the most famous thing that defines Atlanta? Looks like the civil rights movement and Dr. King is the overwhelming favorite, followed by Coca-Cola. So that's interesting. And then in what area of town have you spent the least amount of time? Looks like Clayton County is number one, followed by Tri-Cities. So that's College Park, East Point, and Hapeville, and then the North Metro suburbs. And then
I gotta admit something, ER.
yeah.
Where I am on that list is Buckhead. That's the place I've spent the least amount of time. No one said that one, but I am, unfortunately, that is
Hey.
my least.
And then which of the following places do you most want to visit? The Elephant Graves at Old Atlanta Prison Farm. Do you want to just say a little bit about that since that's number one?
Yeah. Okay, so this is a strange thing, and these days you really got to dig in order to find it. But there is a place called the Old Atlanta Prison Farm, which is down off Key Road, which is near the dump down on Moreland Avenue. Probably you might know it more because it's close to the Starlight 6 Drive-In, which also has a section in my book. But the Old Atlanta Prison Farm is not open to the public. But back in the early 1900s, or it may have been, early 1900s, the Zoo Atlanta was looking for a place to bury their zoo animals. And they were given this little section of land. And, I grew up going to zoos pretty regularly. And it's true, you get attached to the animals. At that time, they were much more personified. They were given names, and the kids would bring them presents and feed them and stuff like that. The kind of things we're not really allowed to do with elephants and giraffes and hippos anymore, but for the good of the animals. But people wanted to have a continued connection with those zoo animals, so they buried them on the side of the road and actually put up a plaque and a memorial to these animals. And so it used to be that people would go on pilgrimage down to Key Road to see the graves of these elephants and possibly gorillas. I've also heard that might be as well. Today, however, you can barely tell it's there. There's the folk artist Joel Slayton, who created the Doll's Head Trail, which you've heard me and ER mention a couple times, did put a sign up that says, zoo animals buried here. But it's honestly just on the side of Key Road. You just kind of pull over. It's covered with kudzu, some poison ivy. But if you look down off the road, you'll see there's this little area with some crushed marble gravel and kind of sectioned off by some concrete. And that's the location that these animals were buried. And I did find a historic picture of like some kids and grown-ups watching a crane lifting the carcass of a dead elephant at this location, which is amazing and kind of crazy. But the story goes on and on from there, and you can look up more about it. But this elephant was part of the personal menagerie of Asa Candler Jr. and was actually originally housed where the Briarcliff campus of Emory University now is, which was the Candler Mansion. And the reason why these two elephants in particular went to Zoo Atlanta is because they smelled so bad that the people in Druid Hills said, Asa, you've got to get those animals off your property.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is great. So our final poll question, which I think we need a definitive answer about, is what is Atlanta's largest living thing? So overwhelmingly 39 votes for a tree, 5 votes for a whale shark. Now, some folks may be cheating because they already have the book, but can you tell us the definitive answer and why you asked?
It is a tree. But we did a little bit of math involved in this. There is not a scientist whose job it is to define what the largest living thing is. But I did go to my friend and collaborator Eli Dickerson, who runs the Champion Tree Project of Atlanta. And undeniably, the cherry bark oak at the Our Lady of Perpetual Hope Rest Home, which is just south of Turner Field, not called Turner Field anymore, now called Georgia State Stadium. Just south of the stadium, there's this home, and the nuns there have this gigantic, the biggest tree in Atlanta, right in the kind of courtyard. If you want to pull up a picture of it, I think I might have. Well, maybe I'm not sure if I did. Let's see. It would be called cherry bark oak. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
If you want to pull up the picture, I hugged it because I'm a tree hugger,
Yeah.
But Eli and I did a little bit of math of the actual volume and mass of this tree versus the whale shark, which of course is the largest animal here in Atlanta, and it is. We figured that this is definitely the largest living creature. It is a fantastically big tree, and don't worry, those are not a real eyes, nose, and mouth on it. I think the nuns they've said that they hope it gives some hope to the people who are housed there, and I think that they just having a good time there with the tree. But I mean, you can see I'm a fairly tall and person, and I look dwarfed by that tree. You are welcome to walk in, call in advance, and just say, "Hey, can I come see your tree?" And when I went there, they were delighted to show me the tree. They actually just walked me right through and then left me in the patio there, and I just got to hang out with the tree for a while. But do be really respectful because it is a private location. The other funny thing about this tree is Eli tells me that there's some controversy about it. Not about how big it is, but rather the tree is so large that tree experts are not sure if it's a cherry bark oak or a southern red oak. The world may never know.
Well, Jonah, this has been amazing. The comments on the chat have been really appreciative. Is there anything that you didn't get to tell us that you're like, I don't want you to leave without knowing this special secret or fact?
No. You got to read the book. Come on, I can't give it all away.
No.
This has been fun. I hope that y'all have enjoyed some of these stories, and I hope you can see that when I tell the stories, I hope I have a little twinkle in my eye of just saying, this is fun. These are interesting stories. But I only really went into one story that I think has a little bit more of that dark history of Atlanta. But there's some rough things that have happened in this town, and things that aren't right. And I didn't try to step away from those things. And so even though a lot of what I'm lifting up here are the kind of fun, lighthearted stories, we have places that you need to visit that tell you more about what Atlanta is about, including a memorial to people who were lynched in the state of Georgia, including the first firehouse that was integrated, and also including the site of Civil War fortifications. So it's not just fun, quirky things about the city, but I hope what you'll get out of it also is some of those deeper stories that you'll want to read more about. And there are great books to read more about those lesser known parts of Atlanta history beyond just Dr. King.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I did put the book that you mentioned in the chat with a link. It's from Mercer University Press, and it's somewhat hard to get at the moment.
It's out of print, yeah.
Yeah, but I also get it from your library because it is going to be at the library. I also put another more recent book called White Flight by Kevin Cruz that has the story of the Atlanta Berlin Wall in it. So if you're interested in civil rights history in the city, and particularly that story, he does a really good job talking about it. So check that out.
Kevin Cruz's research is I based what I wrote. I had to write a much more condensed version, but I based a lot of what I wrote on his book. I'm glad you posted that.
Yeah, so check those out. You have a link to buy Secret Atlanta from Charis Books and More at the bottom of the page. We would love for you to buy it or Jonah's first book, Hiking Atlanta's Hidden Forest, from us. You also got a opportunity to make a donation to Charis Circle. Charis Circle's mission is to foster sustainable feminist communities, work for social justice, and encourage the expression of diverse and marginalized voices. We do that in lots of ways, and one of the ways we do that is by fostering healthy and happy communities. And an event like this is really very much in that spirit. So thank you so much, Jonah. We love all your books. And one more thing, I have to give an appreciation to Jonah because Jonah just donated a beautiful purple bicycle rack to Charis. And he was so kind because I got a teeny tiny wimpy bike rack. And Jonah and his family are wonderful cyclists. And he said, ER, I don't know if you know this, but that's not a very good bike rack, which was very kind. And so he got us a beautiful purple bike rack that was installed just before coronavirus hit. And so it hasn't really gotten to be used very much. But the next time you're out biking in Decatur, come.
I've locked to it once.
Yes.
I just had to.
Yeah. But now it's there. You can come visit us. We always want to encourage more cycling in the city. And yeah, the comments have been wonderful. Thank you all for being a part of this. It's really been great. And I've learned a lot as a native Atlantan. I'm sure other folks have too. So get your copy, Secret Atlanta. Everybody be safe and healthy out there. Thanks so much, Jonah. Take care.
Yeah, much love, everybody. And I hope that you're all healthy and safe.
Yeah. All right. Take care.